On today's Maker's Mashup, we're going to be talking about thermal imagers and everything you need to know before buying one. The first time I saw thermal imaging was way back in 1987 when they released the Predator movie, and that thermal vision was honestly some of the coolest stuff I had ever seen at the time, and I actually saw that movie in the theater. Fast forward to today, and I've been using a thermal imager now for a couple of years for various things. I do a lot of different electronics here at the house. I'm able to see a device and see where there might be a hotspot drawing more current, and just really a visual representation of the heat footprint being put out by anything, including single board computers. So a couple of weeks ago, the TopDon team reached out to me about a review of their TC001. I already had a thermal imager, so I thought, let's compare that versus the TopDon and see what the results were. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be covering side by side the Flir One LT and the TC001, and I'll show you how I've used these in the past and tell you some of the gotchas that I've run across over the years. And at the end, you can decide if thermal imaging is right for you, and more importantly, if the TC001 or the Flir One LT is a better device. So with all that said, let's get to work. So here we have a 3D printer heat bed, and for the most part, both devices perform equally well. Something to note here is the accuracy of these devices. They work really well for showing distribution, but the TopDon has a 2% variance in its accuracy, and the Flir has a 5% variance in its accuracy. So what that means is that these devices shouldn't be relied on to be ultra accurate. So now we're going to move on to the electronics enclosure, and both devices perform pretty well. Obviously the TopDon has a little bit better accuracy here, and what I use this for is determining whether or not the devices that I am enclosing have enough cooling and ventilation. And really, the thermal imaging works really well for this purpose because you're able to see temperatures on the inside and outside of the device, which might not be easy to read using another means. Moving on to the hot end, the TopDon performed much better at higher temperatures. The Flir was a bit disappointing with the hot end. It only has a max temperature of 150 degrees Celsius, but this unit was released back in 2018, so technology has obviously advanced since then, and the TopDon really showing that with the ability to go all the way up to 500 degrees Celsius. Here we have an entryway door. It's easy to see the leaks with both devices. The temp changes are visible in both, but it seems to read a much more even and consistent pattern with the TopDon, and this again is a more recent device than the Flir One. Another great use of using a thermal imager is your sealing. You can see if your insulation is performing well, and the only thing that we see here are the studs, and that's because it's transferring that thermal energy all the way across and not insulated, which is really kind of a neat effect. The TopDon does have some better tools for its software to be able to mark the different areas that you're going to test, and you can see this line that I've drawn here through the corner of the joint between the roof and the wall, and it's very easy to see where those temperatures are. Now the last test that I ran was a heat gun, and again, this is where the TopDon really does perform much better. I was able to sense higher temperatures, but I was only able to get the TopDon to about 200 C with my heat gun. I was hoping for some higher temperatures, but my cheap heat gun really doesn't seem to cut the mustard. So as you can see, the TC001 really the much better device here. However, I have to give some credit to the Flir One LT because it is a device that came out back in 2018. Now, Flir may be producing a new device, and if you know about that, let me know down in the comments. It's not unusual that technology leapfrogs like this, and I would expect a Flir One to come out that is competitive with the TC001. The part that I was still very surprised about, though, is that for a device, the Flir One is still $299 or more for this device, where currently the TC001 is only $239. So there's a bit of a cost difference, but you also get better performance with the TC001. So I think it's a bit of a no-brainer, but you may want to evaluate these and your particular use cases for how you plan to use these devices. So which device do you think is the better device here? Let me know down in the comments. And with that is going to bring the end of today's video. If you liked it, make sure you mash that like button and don't forget to share and subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. I'd also like to just take a quick moment to thank all of my Patreon subscribers and channel members. Thank you for your continued support of the channel. It really does help produce all of these different videos. So with that, I want to say thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.